Reading 19 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3, Quaramid, Uccle, February 22nd, 1946. The Psychological Meaning of Foot. On one occasion it was said by Mr. Ouspensky that he had leather to sell for those who wish to make shoes for themselves. There are two kinds of shoes. The first shoes are made by life in us. We learn to behave in certain ways, to think that these people are right and those people are wrong. We imbibe ingrained attitudes through imitation according to our social position and all the rest of it. Some of these shoes are made more by the mother and some more by the father. When you see a person walking in his father's shoes, or perhaps in his mother's shoes, you understand that that person is not awake yet. All this has reference to the feet, and we have to think tonight about the meaning of the feet esoterically. Life shoes wear out sometimes, and on the other hand, sometimes they remain permanent. A person who has never questioned his acquired life attitudes, his buffers, his prejudices, and so on, will perhaps have permanent shoes made by the action of life on him. At the same time, it is possible for a person to come to the point in which his or her shoes get worn out. Now the shoes are that with which we walk on the earth. Esoterically speaking, our feet are where we touch external life, and the shoes that cover our feet represent the attitudes and prejudices and opinions that we meet life with. When the work says it has leather to sell to make shoes, it means, of course, to make new shoes so that we can walk in life in a different way. The foot, psychologically speaking, is the most external part of us, the part of us that meets with life. You have heard about the first conscious shock, which takes place at the point where external impressions enter us. Ordinarily, there is no shock here. External life enters us, and we behave towards it always in much the same way. We take everything as we have always taken it. We behave in the same way. We relate ourselves to external circumstances, to people, to all that belongs to external life, in the way we always have done. The first conscious shock consists in the transformation of impressions. If you take everything coming in through the senses from external life in the same way as you have always done, you will not transform life. Every time you see A or B, who exist in external life, whom you see and hear through your external senses, you react to them in the same way as you always have done. You are not working on yourself. You are not giving yourself the first conscious shock, which consists in receiving external impressions in a new way. A man, a woman, heavily prejudiced, orthodox, and opinionated, will naturally find it very difficult to take in impressions in a new way. Where their psychological feet touch life, they will always walk in the same manner. Now, if we turn this into work terms, we can say that in such a case, we behave mechanically. So the mechanical side of us is our feet. As long as we behave mechanically towards every situation, we will always walk in the same places, psychologically speaking. That is to say, we will not be giving ourselves the first conscious shock or transforming incoming impressions. Remember that all you see and hear, all the people you know, all that you read, is incoming impressions, because we are only in contact with external life through incoming impressions from our senses. It is just at this point of incoming impressions that the work teaches something quite definite. If these incoming impressions always fall in the same place in you and excite the same reactions, the same dislikes, the same likes, the same judgments, the same criticisms, the same thoughts, the same feelings, then nothing can shift you from where you are. You will not be doing this work. In such a case, one is a pure machine, a pure example of mechanical behavior. Your feet, which are this mechanicalness through which you touch life, will always walk in the same way. We were speaking recently here about how the work from the very beginning teaches us that we have to go against our mechanicalness, and also how this is impossible unless by long observation we can see our mechanicalness. This is the introduction to the work. A man, a woman, who cannot observe themselves and their mechanical behavior cannot work on themselves. They take their mechanical behavior for granted, being certain that their automatic condemnations, their criticisms, their prejudices, their contempts, and so on, are absolutely right. In short, they take life in the only way they can, as long as they do not observe how they take it. I think the main point lies here, namely that accepting these mechanical reactions to other people, to external life, they feel that they are not only absolutely right, but that no other way of taking people and the events of life could be possible. This is a mistake. Sometimes, quite genuinely, a person may say to me, "How can I take this or that person differently, because I feel sure that this or that person is wrong and not the kind of person that I would ordinarily know if I could help it?" This means that there is no act of transformation taking place in them. The external impressions come in and, like the automatic telephone exchange, ring up the same reactions in them, and they feel that this is the only way to react. Speaking recently about this, I said it was a good thing to read the Sermon on the Mount and to realize that it is all about reacting in a new way. To react as a Pharisee is one thing. A Pharisee means one who reacts in a fixed and prejudiced way. But the Sermon on the Mount has nothing to do with praise of the Pharisee in us. It has to do with destroying the Pharisee, with taking things in a quite different way. So it belongs to the teaching about the first conscious shock, that is, the transformation of incoming impressions. But we always take incoming impressions of other people, of life situations, in the same way. We are not creating this first conscious shock. We are still wearing our life-made shoes. Certainly, we are not shod with the leather of the work. From what has been said, you can understand that the foot represents the purely mechanical side, or personality, governed by false personality. In this work, we are told that we have to make personality, speaking in general, more and more passive. That is, to change one's mechanical reaction. Personality is something acquired in us, chiefly through imitation. You have a mother personality, a father personality, a mixed personality, a school personality, a college personality, and so on. As long as this personality, however acquired, is active in you, you will always take every person in the external world, everything said, everything read, everything seen, in exactly the same way as you have always done, and you will feel that you are quite right in taking these things in that way. Why? Because you have never challenged your personality. You have never begun to observe this thing called personality in you, but have accepted it as truth. You stand on your personality just as you stand on your feet, because psychologically your most inveterate and habitual psychology is your feet. The psychological man, the psychological woman, rests on the feet of the most mechanical eyes in the moving parts of centers. It is the basis of your reactions, the source of how you behave. Now the work has leather to sell, to make new shoes, new feet, new ways of behaving towards life and all its incidents. It is a marvelous thing to realize that you can behave differently towards any single thing in life, that you need not take it as you are taking it, and that, in short, you can behave differently and feel differently, provided you begin to think differently. That is, change the mind. As you know, this work is to make us think differently, and from that, gradually to feel differently, and eventually to see ourselves with new eyes. Do not you ever get tired of the way you behave? It would indeed be wonderful not to think, not to feel, and not to behave in the way we always mechanically do. When Smith realizes Smith and wishes to separate from Smith, he begins to understand what this work is about. He begins to see what mechanicalness means, and through self-observation, to realize the mechanical figure in him, the pure machinery, to which hitherto he has been a complete slave. It is said in the work that the realization of our mechanicalness is the first step towards self-remembering. The quality of the first conscious shock is sometimes denoted by the term self-remembering. It is said that if a man will give himself this conscious shock, in the midst of his cares and anxieties, he will create in himself new force. In fact, he will actually make new hydrogens, new energies in himself. It is in this sense that it is meant that the realization of mechanicalness is one of the first forms of self-remembering. It is a form of transformation, of impressions, of the transformation of our whole relationship to ourselves, and so to outer life. It is a step towards not being a pure mechanical function of the personality. If you can understand something about this first conscious shock that takes place just where incoming impressions enter you from outer life, you will begin to feel the magical experience that you need not take this typical situation in the typical way you have always taken it, that you need not feel this dislike that you always feel, this hatred, this disgust, this boredom, this sadness. You begin to learn what it means that you need not identify with everything. So you begin to see where, in what direction, new life can begin. All this belongs to the understanding of the first conscious shock, which is transformation, to the realization that one need not react to impressions as one has always done. As I said, this mechanical, habitual side of us is called esoterically foot, the psychological basis of yourself, what you stand on at present. There is a very interesting passage in Isaiah which begins with the strange remark that you must turn away your foot from the Sabbath. Isaiah is an esoteric book. It is full of esoteric teaching. That means at once that it cannot be taken literally, just as any parable in the Gospels cannot be taken literally. It has inner meaning behind its literal meaning. Let us take this first phrase. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath. If you take that literally, what can it mean? If you take the Sabbath as going to church, it seems to mean that if you turn your foot away from church, it would be a good thing. But of course, it does not mean this. You have to understand the passage psychologically. The foot is your most mechanical eyes, situated in the most external part of centers, the parts where you touch the ground, external life, and react to this external life mechanically. If you turn yourself away from your mechanical reaction in connection with the Sabbath, then you may get something worthwhile. Let us quote the whole passage. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, and the holy of the Lord honorable, and shalt honor it, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in the Lord, and I will make thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and I will feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. Isaiah 28:13-14. If you look at these strange verses psychologically, you will see that they are full of meaning, and they tell you exactly what this work tells us now. This work tells you that if you go against your mechanicalness, even for a short time, you will get some result. The meaning of Sabbath, in its original sense, is cessation. The meaning of the Sabbath is to cease from your mechanical life, to cease from having your own way, from speaking as you do ordinarily, and so on. You can have your Sabbath, your cessation from your mechanicalness whenever you like. For example, you can have a cessation from your mechanical self for half an hour and even for 5 minutes. What does it mean to cease from doing your will? It means to do the will of the work. For example, at this particular moment, to do the will of the work instead of serving your self-will may mean not to identify with your present suffering, or it may mean not to justify yourself as you are doing, or it may mean to externally consider that person. All this the work teaches us, or it may mean for you at this moment to stop making internal accounts, to stop internal considering. This is what the work teaches us. It may mean not to go with negative emotions or believe in them, but to separate from them. This the work teaches us. It means, in short, all that the work teaches us. And when we try to do this for a short time, we have our own Sabbath, our own cessation from ourselves. So we turn our foot away. Most people think that the Sabbath is rest from life work. But esoterically, the Sabbath means work on yourself by ceasing from yourself. It is a good thing to work on yourself sincerely for a short Sabbath and try to bring the whole of the ideas of the work into your mind so that they lift you up from mechanical life. The work is a higher power acting on us, but we must bring the whole of the work into our minds and the whole meaning of it to lift us up from too petty talking, too many life anxieties, too easily indulged jealousies, to this higher power. And if we do this work, we will always find results. But do not start with turning away only from your physical appetites. Rather, begin to turn away from things in your emotional and thinking centers. Turn away from being negative, from feeling that other people should do what you find you have to do. Turn away from your identified states, from your ordinary judgments of other people. Turn away from your depression. Turn away from the feeling that you are right. Turn away from all the work teaches us to turn away from. For then one can get new force, which Isaiah, in the same chapter, describes in these words: "And the Lord shall guide thee continually, and satisfy thy soul in dry places, and make strong thy bones, and thou shalt be like a watered garden, and like a spring of water, whose waters fail not." Isaiah 28:11. This is a description of the results of giving the first conscious shock.